1943, Bengal, a land of poetry, rivers, and fields of golden rice, suddenly turned into a graveyard. Millions of Indians, men, women, and children died, not because of drought, not because of some natural disaster, but because of a man sitting thousands of miles away in London. His name, Winston Churchill, today celebrated as the man who saved the world from Hitler. But in Bengal, he is known as the butcher, remembered as the man who starved an entire nation. This is the untold story of the Great Bengal Famine of 1943. The Great Bengal Famine of 1943 did not occur out of thin air. Prior to that, Bengal was always known as the rice bowl of India, enriched by poultry, by fishery, by rice, by endless things to eat, healthy, happy men and women thriving in a beautiful culture. It was a region of abundance. But unfortunately, India was under the clutches of the British Empire in the 1940s. And what happened to the nations who were under British Empire? Well, their men, women and children were treated worse than how British dogs were treated. Indian economy had already been drained out in the prior decades, and India was already slowly declining and reaching a point where there was no point of healthy and happy return for the nation's economy. But then came the biggest jerk. The Second World War had pushed the empire to the edge. By 1942, after Japan's lightning advance in Burma, Britain lost one of its biggest rice suppliers. Suddenly, Bengal was cut off from imports. Panic spread, prices rose. The food system, already fragile under colonial control, began to collapse. And then came the man at the center of our story. As you all know, in British memory, Churchill is a man idolized as a man, as a hero who stood against Hitler's Nazi invasions, a man who kept the world free, a man who basically stood between the Nazi conquest of the entire European nations, which could have subsequently led to a world conquest of the rest of the world as well. It's a dark legacy. Legacy of a man who killed millions. Churchill had deep disdain for Indians. He was a known racist, no less than Hitler anywhere. In his writings and speeches, he often dismissed them as a beastly people with a beastly religion.
Here he is at last, the mystery man of India. Our first glimpse as the Rajputana came alongside at Marseille.
When Mahatma Gandhi launched the Quit India movement in 1942, demanding freedom, Churchill mocked him as a half-naked fakir. His hatred towards Indians, towards Hinduism, towards the darker-skinned people was pretty well known in Churchill's circles. So when famine began to grip Bengal, Churchill's attitude was already poisoned with prejudice. To him, Indians were mere cattle who he could use as he liked, kill as he liked, destroy as he liked. Let's rewind. After Japan invaded Burma in 1942, Britain feared a Japanese invasion of Bengal. In panic, the colonial administration ordered a denial policy. Boats were destroyed, rice stocks were confiscated in coastal Bengal, all to prevent food from falling into Japanese hands if they invade. But this military precaution had a devastating side effect. It wiped out local food reserves. When the Japanese didn't come, it was ordinary Bengalis who paid the price. Soon, rice prices skyrocketed. Speculators hoarded grain. The poor, who lived hand to mouth, found themselves unable to buy even a handful of rice. By the mid 1943, hunger was everywhere, but famine could have been prevented if food relief had been sent. And here's where Churchill enters the story. As Bengal starved, Indian leaders begged for shipments. The Viceroy of India, Lord Linlithgow, sent desperate telegrams to London. The Governor of Bengal, Sir John Herbert, warned of mass starvation, but Churchill's war cabinet repeatedly denied requests for gain. Why? Because Churchill had other priorities. For him, dying and starving Indians did not matter. For him, the British soldiers fighting in Germany mattered more. So everything that was edible was quickly transferred to the German lines where the British army stood fighting the Germans. His cabinet notes reveals chilling indifference. When asked to divert ships carrying wheat to Bengal, Churchill snapped, "If there is a famine in India, why hasn't Gandhi died yet?" You heard that right. He said these exact words. Imagine that. His cabinet notes reveal chilling indifference. In July 1943, when officials pressed him again for food shipments, Churchill replied that Indians were breeding like rabbits and relief would do no good. You heard that right again. For Churchill, Indians were breeding like rabbits, and for him, a few dying Indians, not a few actually, millions by the way, did not matter much. The famine unfolded with horrifying speed. By 1943, Calcutta's streets were filled with emancipated bodies. Children with swollen bellies cried for food. Women sold their jewelry, their homes, even their dignity just to buy a handful of rice. Families abandoned dying relatives on the roadside because they could no longer carry them. Journalist Ian Stephens, editor of The Statesman, broke the silence by publishing haunting photographs of skeletal famine victims. These images shocked the world, but for months, British censors had tried to suppress news of the famine. Estimates vary, but between 3 and 4 million people died, not from drought, not from flood, but from policy, indifference, and prejudice. Churchill's defenders, just like any racist leader's defenders, said a few things. It was a hard time. Hard calls had to be made. It was wartime. People were dying anyways, so they had to pick and choose who they could let to die. It simply meant let the Indians die, even if it's our mistake, let them die. But we can't lose the war. If a few extra supplies were kept in Bengal, that could have helped the starving people, but if in that case, a few Japanese army had invaded and taken over and ate that food, that was worse for the British. So their call was let the Bengali Indians die and win the war anyways. By late 1943, famine began to subside, not because of relief shipments from London, but because of the next year's harvest and American pressure on Britain. But the scars ran deep. Entire villages were wiped out. Bengal's social fabric shattered. Survivors carried trauma for life. And Indians never forgot. The famine became a turning point in India's freedom struggle. The illusion that Britain was a benevolent ruler was destroyed. For many, the famine showed the empire's true face, a system built on exploitation, indifferent to Indian lives. In the past few decades, we have seen occasions where people went out and destroyed Winston Churchill statues in London, in England, and elsewhere. They were done usually for politically motivated reasons, but this was the biggest one. Churchill's treatment of Indians was no different from how Hitler had treated the Jewish people, or how Hitler had treated any people who he considered inferior to his Aryan race. Churchill was no different. The only difference was he won the war, so he got to write most of the books. Thank you.